What office are you running for? Are you the guy? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm running for the office of the State Representative and House of Representatives, District 15. The reason that I'm running for this is there is a number of reasons, but specifically, I am a conservative, and I am concerned about our state. Steve Toth twisted my arm. We talked at great length a number of times. I met with a number of people, and given my conservative views, they really encouraged me to do this. I was on, I was off, I was on, I was off. Until I went to the meeting the other night at Eagle Ford. And when I listened to Raphael Cruz talk about the Declaration of Independence, talk about the commitments that those gentlemen made at the end, after he had established for all of us that there were many Christians in that group, and that there was as many as 26 of those signers were Christian leaders in some form or fashion. That together they recognized the gravity of their situation, they pledged their lives, they pledged their fortunes, and they pledged their honor. And I thought about that while I was there with my wife as I repeated that pledge to her, and I thought, I've got to do this. I believe that we're at a crucial point in our state. Yes, I'm concerned about taxes. Yes, I'm concerned very much about pro-life. Yes, I'm concerned about free markets. I'm concerned about immigration. All these things are huge on my mind. I've been watching some articles that I receive. I am presently getting an email from the Texas Battleground. Do you know that within the last 2 weeks, Wendy Davis went down to the border with the intention of signing up 45,000 people to be voters? Do you know that when she was done, she signed up 100,000 people? Listen, we're not even paying attention to this.
Yeah.
This is happening so fast. Get on YouTube, look it up for yourself. Look up what the commitment of the Texas Battleground is. Combine that with Navigators, and you look that up, and you see what their agenda is, and their agenda is to turn this state blue. And they will openly say that. They are recruiting people so fast. And as is typical, we're sitting here and we're allowing this to happen, not because we want it to happen, but we're just going about as conservatives. We work every day, we're with our families, we're going to church, and we're doing the things of life that we've all worked so hard to do. But this is going on around us. One of the biggest grievances for me personally in communicating this and understanding this is that as I listened to Raphael Cruz, he said this. He said, do you know that in the last election there were 80 million people identified as evangelicals? 80 million.
Yeah.
How do you identify that? They read the Bible, they pray, they go to church. You know what else he said? He said that 50% of those are registered to vote. You know what else he said? He said 50% of those people voted. If we'd had half, we could have won the election. See, and this is what's happening to us. I'm a pastor of a local church. I'm deeply concerned about what's taking place, especially in this area and where the state could possibly head if we don't pay attention. I meet with 18 pastors in the Woodlands. We meet with Mission One Purpose that I started. Since we started our church, I've been meeting with these guys. Our church is a little less than a year old. We're 11 months old. And it is my job as a pastor, as a citizen, as a resident of the state of Texas since 1980 to get these guys rolling, because even during the recession, when everybody was in a panic, I went to church, I listened to these guys, and not one word was ever said about the fear that people were feeling and what they were going through in that recession. They weren't talking about political issues, they weren't giving anybody advice on who to vote for or anything. They weren't even sitting there saying, this is what this individual, leave his name out, believes. This is what this individual believes. This is what we believe. This is what the Bible teaches. They wouldn't even say that. Follow the one that the Bible teaches. And so as I sat there and I watched all that, and I listened to Raphael Cruz, and as we had been talking about conservatives stepping up and getting the ball rolling, I'm done. I've got to do this. I have to do this. I've raised 4 kids in this state. I've I've had them all here, I've raised them all here, I've educated them here. Three of my 4 kids, their daughters, are married to great guys. One's a consultant for BP, one is and I'll end this just here in 2 seconds. One's a medical student, graduate of A&M. They're in Fort Worth, and the other associate pastor, and now is involved in construction. These are going to have kids. My son is here in this area. He works in our church. He worked with me at Northside Alexis for many years, from age 16 to he could work all the way up till he graduated from school at age 22, where he was in his master's program. They've been raised to work. They've been raised to fend for themselves. They've been raised to do the right things. And here we have people that very possibly, if we don't get rolling, start speaking, we're going to miss this deal. We're going to lose it. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Dennis, go ahead.
Well, you know, we're all kind of pro Steve guys anyway, so we've watched a little bit of what he's done. Are there some particular things that he started that you think you need to pick up on, or some of them you need to sit back and watch, or what do you have in mind? What areas of legislation do you have in mind that need attention and need quickness?
Well, I think there are a couple areas. One, I think and as I've been recently getting into this whole issue of education and C-scope and what's taking place with that, I think there's a huge opportunity there for us. And the issue of transparency in that, the issue of parents not knowing what's going on, the issue of we have a textbook, that's a good set of textbooks, or pretty good, I think, solid set of textbooks, and then you have a teaching curriculum over here that is not matching the textbooks. That's a problem. And there's some of the things that they have been teaching in that. And as I've read a little bit, Glenn Beck and David Barton have talked about some of those issues that are being taught contrary to what are our basic values. So I believe that that's an issue. I believe another issue is with that is on the horizon and is taking place right now, is this whole issue of creation versus evolution in the textbook and the education system. You guys don't know this about me. In 1981, I was at Dallas Theological Seminary. I went to the Creation Evolution trial in Arkansas. I sat through it. I was there for 2 weeks with Norman Geisler, myself, another guy named A.F. Brooke, and Norman Geisler all published a book called The Creator in the Courtroom, Scopes 2. And what it was an accounting of what took place in Arkansas and how they passed off intelligent design as being just something for Sunday school. And I know that our Barbara, yes, is fighting this issue right now. Is talking about this issue right now, and it absolutely must be taught, intelligent design, that it is an alternative, because they are both theories. They teach evolution as if it's a fact, as if it is self-authenticating. They teach evolution as if it cries out from the ground that it's truth. It is absolutely not. You have to have a set of presuppositions to deal with that, just like you have presuppositions when you come to intelligent design. So anyway, education, I think, is an important issue that's around the corner, and there's other issues as well.
James.
Now I answer this because one thing that would personally, just we haven't discussed this personally, would make me a little hesitant about a pastor is a pastor is used to using the church's funds, which are given freely. But now tax dollars are not given freely. So my question is, now a lot of people also don't know that most of these federal programs, they come through the state, Medicaid, and that sort of thing, food stamps and so forth.
Right.
So my question to you is, when does the state help, meaning spend my tax dollars to help people, and when does it not?
That's a great question.
We're looking for a great answer.
Well, I think, here's an example. No, that's probably not a good example. Here's what I believe. I believe that if we have designated federal funds that are given to us for particular things, then we need to use those funds for what they were intended to be used for. I don't think it is fair for us as a state to use funds that are given to us by the federal government so that we can put in boathouses and boats with that money, then sit there and put tax burdens upon the people with higher tax rates in their property taxes, for instance, when you have such an influx of people that are coming in. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of people who are coming in here. Economy of scale says our taxes ought to be going down, but they're going up. What is happening to the tax dollars? Should they have been spent on roads? Should they have been spent on those kinds of things? So in my judgment, if we could just spend the money on what is designated to spend, and our Texas taxes be spent on the things that are the pillars of our Constitution, I think we'd be a whole lot better. I think that the issue of our the pillars being education, medical things, the transportation issues, incarceration issues, those are the things that we need to focus on and keep our monies in. Not investing monies in the wine country and various things like that that are going on. I think federal dollars need to be federal dollars. The state tax dollars need to go to things that are designated in our Constitution. It's easy.
So you don't think health care should be provided for the working poor, as they're called? They're working. They're not technically poor, but they can't afford health care.
I do not believe that health care is a civil right. I do not believe it is an alienable right. I believe that health care is a privilege. I believe that health care could be available for people as they are able to work and as we are able to create an environment that enriches our small business and enriches our free, our opportunity for the development of our business climate. I think when that happens, I do believe in supply-side economics. I do believe that if you have a group of people who are successful in business, it is to their benefit to ensure that those who are part of what they are doing are going to be benefited by that. And so I do not believe that it is a state responsibility to cover that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, you
That's
said
my position. Go
you
ahead.
said healthcare is not an alienable right. Do you mean not an inalienable?
Inalienable
Okay.
right. Yes.
Tricky language there.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, one of your answers, one of your top three priorities was lower taxes. Part two is cut spending. For lower taxes, you said eliminate the franchise tax. I'm assuming that you're well versed on what the franchise tax was instituted for, and so my question is, what are you intending to replace it with? And when you're going to cut spending, is that spending going to be cut? Can you be a little bit more specific? I know you
Yes.
said Texas
Yes.
things for the Texas Constitution and so forth.
Yes. What is the margins tax? Right now it's 0.5% and 1% for retail or whatever.
If you make over $1 million, I think, in revenues, not profit.
Right, exactly. It is a form, the biggest problem I have with it is a form of taxation on existence. It's, you start a business, we're gonna tax you. It's not a tax on consumption. It's not a tax on individuals purchasing something and using something, and the result of that being that they're able to raise taxes. This Van Orm, this little town in Van Orm, I think is this. I was recently listening to a podcast where these guys have taken their city taxes and have based their taxes on consumption. It's unbelievable what they've done. So they have gone through the process of eliminating the property taxes, other areas that I think tax a person not on their productivity, but tax them on their existence. And I think that's part of the problem with the franchise tax. I mean, why don't we tax people on what is being consumed as opposed to production? And this is not even on production. You sit there and you produce it, it goes and sits in a silo. It sits in the silo, it gets a tax. Then it goes from the silo, and then the grain goes and it gets picked up by Pillsbury. Pillsbury picks it up, turns it into flour. There's a tax. Then it turns around and goes from flour, then it goes to Keough cookies, and it started Pillsbury cookies, and now we have cookies sitting on a shelf.
So will a consumption tax result in less consumption?
Well, possibly. We're a consuming group of people, first of all. We will continue to consume. And if we don't have to be burdened with others, it's not like we're taking the consumption tax and adding it to other taxes. What I'm advocating for, whether or not this could even ever get handled, it's kind of like a flat tax. I mean, could we ever really get a flat tax handled? I think a flat tax would be awesome. But is that ever gonna happen in the federal? I don't know. I doubt it. But, given the powers that be, but when it comes to this, to the franchise tax, what we're doing is penalizing people for opening up businesses. That's what it comes down to. And guess who pays for it anyway? The consumer. The end user pays the taxes. They're gonna pass this on. $2 for a box of cigarettes right now. $2, and they want more taxes to come to fund some more educational stuff. I'm not pro-cigarettes, I'm not pro-smoking. All I'm saying is that that's the kind of tax that you're talking about, just because they produced it.
So on your question that Dennis asked you, I think you ran out of time, so don't explain them all, but just, he asked you what you wanted to change the state legislature. You listed textbooks and creation.
Yes.
And so just list the other things that are as equally, I got a two-part question. List the other things that are equally on your mind, just list them, we can go through them later, but,
Okay.
and then I'll ask you my question.
Okay, I've just talked a little bit about taxes. Another issue that I believe is an issue,
I'll be very short with you.
okay, is the issues that have to do with immigration.
Okay.
Immigration having to do with, I can start, if I cite a couple of these things. it's just
don't
gonna
go into,
take-
just list
But
them.
immigration having to do with, here are a group of people, God love them, that are illegally here, and now there's the move and is going on to educate these people in their own language, and the taxpayers pay for it. I have a problem with that.
What
I
else?
just came from a place, okay, that's that issue with immigration.
Right.
And another issue is the healthcare issues having to do with immigration.
Okay.
Given the amount of people that had were birthed in the state of Texas last year, 58% were Medicaid babies. How can you explain that? And we can't even document where they came from. I mean, that is a problem for me. I think that's worthy of looking at. When it does come to the budget, last year, according to the Wall Street Journal, last year the budget, we spent a 26% increase in our budget, over our budget, than what we had done the previous year. 26%, I mean, that's mind-boggling. And they even said that that was the largest amount of money that a state in the United States, ever in the history of the states, has ever increased in 1 year. I've not attacked this close enough to really see where all this stuff is going and what's taking place, but I do know that with this influx of people that are coming into this state, with the influx of people coming into the Woodlands and surrounding area, I believe with windfalls like Exxon coming in, the tax level that will come from that group over there, as it comes in, we have such an unbelievable amount of cash. We just decide if we've got the cash, we just need to spend more money. I operated car dealerships, and we had the cash, and we rat-holed that cash. We saved if we had the extra cash, but in our situation, what they'll do is they'll just continue to spend it. Government's going to continue to get bigger as they continue to spend it on more and more items, and they will do it under the guise of we're going to spend this today because these are pre-inflation dollars, and it makes sense that although we have it down a 6 or 8 year plan down the road, let's don't wait. Let's just do it right now. My thinking is, hey, wait a second. I want some of that money back. I want that to go back towards my property. Why has the last 2 years my property taxes gone up $1,000 a year or thereabouts?
Right.
See, so
Larry.
On your questionnaire, your occupation, you say you're a retired pastor of Pathfinders Fellowship.
I'm not a retired pastor.
I'm
I was
Retired comma pastor.
I retired from the car business
Okay.
after 26 years, and then we had started. Just so y'all know, we started a Bible study in the summer of 2012. Never intended it to be a church. I'd been a pastor of a church many years ago, and it just kind of rocked right along. And then come January, people were moving that direction. People were giving to it as if it was a church. And so what we did was decided to start a church. And Keough Ministries became, in a legal name, Keough Ministries, doing business as Pathfinders Fellowship. The name's soon to be changed. We have recently got the approval for it to the Woodlands Bible Church.
And do you give your members a manufacturer warranty?
Yeah. But we, it's,
No, that's issued by the manufacturer.
yeah. But, so I was in business for all those years, and then when I had the opportunity, my wife and I, I played pretty good offense, my wife plays great defense. And so we were able to posture ourselves financially to be able to actually really do this. And I had a desire to retire when I was 55. I ended up retiring when I was 60. Matter of fact, I turned my notice in the day that I turned 60. And down at Northside Lexus. And in doing that, we decided that we were going to go full-time with the church. And sure enough, we did. This month is the first month I've ever taken any income from any of the ministry we've done all these years in the Woodlands.
Okay.
So, yeah, so go ahead.
Along
That's the kind of
that
history.
line, how will you continue to keep the growth going in your church when you're in Austin?
It's a great question. When I didn't want to do this, or when I thought about doing this, the first thing I did is I went to the elders. I have 4 elders. These guys are all well-educated, have done very well, and good men. One of them is an ex-FBI, another one's an ex-school teacher, who, by the way, the ex-FBI guy was he is my campaign chairman, and he was involved in political corruption, if you can believe that. His name is Ron Stern. Anyway, Ron Stern is one of my elders. Larry Cullers, retired school teacher. Keith Simpson is a financial planner. And my other guy just comes and does what he does. Anyway, I have 4 elders, and they're all really great guys. Randy Miller, who is also he buys and sells houses, and his wife works for Rents Printing. Anyway, these guys came to me and said they felt like this was, as we had each Sunday, not every Sunday, but I will always bring up topics that people are afraid about, or things that they're thinking about during the week, and I will address those from what I believe is a biblical perspective, and give them hope, as opposed to just being silent about this. Well, so when this opportunity came up and I presented it to the elders, they unanimously said, we need to do this. Well, then in doing that, I kind of went backwards and forwards in talking to my family. My wife was very encouraging to me about it. My son was not so, but he wasn't denying it. And the church, we chatted about it a little bit, and 2 weeks ago, I basically decided I can't do this. I just got so much going on. But I listened to Rafael Cruz. I spent some time listening to him. Larry Cohen, the retired history school teacher, was a strong conservative, called me the day before that event and pleaded with me to change my mind. That we believe that this is an opportunity for a real live pastor with a solid education, with a solid business background, to have an impact on the churches and other pastors. We're sending people off on mission trips all over the world. And we've got issues right here, and the people don't even know about it. And we're fixing to get trumped again if we don't pay attention to what's going on with voting. So the church, as I announced this again this last week, and I have a bunch of, I forgot the CDs, I wanted you guys to hear this. You could take it, we kind of honed it down, it's 32 minutes. And it was where I believed that a pastor's position ought to be, and that he ought to have a position in terms of talking to his people about issues that are important in the culture, of which I do. And I announced it at the end that I decided to run for this position, and I got a standing ovation. And it was a long standing ovation. My son cut a bunch of the clapping out of the CD. I said, Josh, why'd you do that, man? We need to hear that. Well, we took that out, but I have to tell you, I was so well received, it was unbelievable. And they want to help, they want to walk. I was cautioned by Ron, who is my campaign chairman, to be extremely careful about a coincidence of funds being commingled in any form or fashion. And we've come up with a little plan. Luke Macias is my consultant. We've talked with that extensively today with him about that, and making sure that we stay above board in how our funding takes place. And but the church, being excited as they are about it, we're looking at it as an opportunity for growth. As a matter of fact, we are in the process. We're getting ready to sign an agreement with the Church Project. It's a group that grew. It's a 13,000 square foot facility next to Wright Printing, 1,000 yards from Market Square. And we've made an agreement, we put the deposit down on it, and we're going to use that. And we'll have the opportunity to move into that in the beginning of January. And this is we can use that for all kinds of things where there is not going to be any type of conflict of interest. We
Okay.
are putting in a wheelchair ramp
Okay.
on the stage that we're building.
How do you see religion and politics? How do they mix?
And two things I never talk about is politics and religion. This is what I believe. I believe that my world and life view is that I cannot bifurcate my world and life view. I cannot divide the sacred from the secular. All of life is sacred. All truth is God's truth. All truth finds its place in the plan and purpose of God. All truth. The reason that man knows what he knows is because by common grace, God has allowed him to know what he knows about life and about stuff. Whether it's mathematics, whether it's about transportation, whether it's about political theory, whatever the case is. If it's truth, it's God's truth. Now, that being said, I believe that that is what drives me and drives my family, and that's what drives the people around me. That's what I want to drive the people in my church. As a Christian, I have a responsibility to be the salt of the earth. That means you won't see me standing up in Congress waving a Bible, but you will see me standing for life. Where do I get that from? Did that just come out of the air? I'll tell you where that came from for me. That came from Psalm 139, where it's as clear as can be. Where God says through the psalmist that my substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret, curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, and in your book all my remembers were written before they were even formed. Life begins at conception, already planned in the mind and heart of God when we're born. It is a travesty. It's unbelievable to me, and I'm guilty. I'm so guilty of apathy towards unborn. We all are. How could this happen? Almost 60 million babies, and yet we have a population growth. Somebody explain that to me.
Immigration.
Exactly.
Services.
That's what's taking place. And now we're allowing this influx of an opening up of our borders, and it's like everybody says that we got to shut our borders, we got to shut our borders. Let's shut the borders. They don't really mean it. They do not really mean it. If they did, we could do it. Are you kidding me?
Dennis.
Anyway, I don't think you can divide the two.
You know, one of the things that creates cultural and physical problems in government at large, the nation and the state too, is the fact that we try to run about half a dozen parallel governments in every language under the sun. So given the ethnic proportions in Texas, is there a way, or what would be the way that we could somehow get to an English-only type of government?
I think there's only one way. And I think that we need to vote as a state that regardless of what the rest of the country does, the language of Texas is English, period. And begin to teach and do whatever in English. If there are people who are here that can't speak English, they need to speak English. My mother was Polish. She was first generation Polish. She went to the public school system. In the public school system, they taught her in English how to speak English. Her home was Polish. When I was raised, my mother wanted to teach me Polish. My father said, no, we need to make sure he understands and can articulate and speak English properly. He focused on English. This whole idea of language, borders, and culture, you sacrifice those three, we're lost. Diversity does not bring about growth. It does not bring about a healthy environment. Diversity causes diversity. I loved my company. I loved my company, Northside Lexus. They were so good to me, the Westlex company. They were so good to me for so many years. But it used to grieve me when we had these diversity classes, and how and then they would have special Spanish classes for the guys who couldn't speak English. And here I'm trying to tell them to move cars from here to there, and they say yes, 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 and I'm pointing over here, and they walk off over here. If everybody gets together and we push this and make this our language, it'll happen. It has been historically. But if people are coming across the border so fast, and we're doing what we do, and what we do in business and the rest, we find ourselves just going, well, we got a problem here, let's just go ahead and deal with it, and we're going to deal with it by just, possibly amnesty for all those who are here. But before we can do this, we need to close the borders, but the borders don't get closed, and we institute things like the DREAM Act and the rest. I mean, it's remarkable. It's almost as if there's some type of an agenda that we kind of all know deep down inside, but we are afraid to admit to, and then nobody will come out and actually say. Whatever that is, I'm just not quite sure, and I'm not going to say, but it seems like there is.
James?
Well, so let me ask you about immigration or education. I think I'm going to ask you about education. Everybody seems to love to spend money on education at the state level. And I understand there's constitutional imperative there, although it doesn't say anything about an expensive education. But, and Barbara Cargill talked about that. So my question is, just talking about 1st to 12th grade, not college or anything after that, just 1st to 12th grade. Currently, 50 cents of every dollar for public schools, only 50 cents of it goes to the teachers in the classroom. So my question is, do we as a state need to spend, not talking about counties, but as a state, at the state level where you'll be, do we need to spend more money on 1st to 12 education? If yes, how much and why? If no, how much can it be cut and why?
I'm not prepared to answer that question in terms of how much it can be cut. I am in favor, however, of not raising it anymore. How much money are we spending on education? How much have we increased the spending on education? And where are we in Texas? What? Still 35 in scores or whatever? I mean, do we really believe that spending more money on education is going to actually help our students? I don't believe that for a minute. I believe that I think there are
But
some...
it helps the teachers, and they surely deserve gobs of more money.
Here's how I look at teaching.
That's what they'll be telling you.
Oh, I understand.
Not to mention the superintendents, the administrative staff.
For sure. It's as big business as anything else, and I understand that. And they will also say, look, this is our greatest resource, and we should spend as much money as we can to get the quality teachers that we can. I will tell you, my experience in the public school system in the Woodlands and surrounding area was awesome.
Was that CISD?
Yes, Conroe
Okay.
Independent School District. And I had 2 of my 4 children graduated from the Woodlands High School. And one of them went to the middle school, and I have to tell you, I was so pleased. I had teachers call me at my house when my son was acting up. It was amazing. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And but here's the deal: more dollars thrown at teachers and more dollars thrown at this whole process is not going to help us. The issue is how we are teaching our students. A says as an apple, B says ba, C says ca as in cat, D says duh. That is basic phonics type learning. I was a headmaster of a Christian school years ago. When I graduated at Grace Theological Seminary Association of
Do you
Christian
think they should be getting state money the same as a public school voucher or something like that?
Christian schools?
Sure.
No, I don't think...
Like charter schools do. Some of which are Christian, many of which are Muslim.
What I think that the taxes that people pay, whatever the proportion of that is, for their children while they're in public school, if they pull them out of the public school, they ought to be able to get the deduction or the credit to go towards where they're putting their children. How that works out practically, I'm not sure. But I do believe there needs to be a tax advantage if they don't send them to the public school system. And there are those that would say, well, we have to keep the tax base in order to keep the public school going. Well, okay, the public school would be going if the public school was doing its job. And so the issue of where our students are ending up in the public school system with the amount of money that we're spending. I mean,
Well, around here, it would just mean less schools that we have to build.
Well, Here's which is true. The issue in education for me all boils down to the quality of the teacher teaching a curriculum that is going to teach a student to think. Do you know that my son, God bless him, and he even came up through the school, everything that he did was typed. Everything he does now is text. His handwriting is terrible. God love him, and he's very sharp, smart. We don't even teach basic skills anymore. We have calculators. We don't need the basic skills. See, these are all skills that everyone needs to know. They have to know it. It's just for the development of a person's analytical skills, for their ability to think and reason and to talk in language that makes sense. And what we have done is we've reduced all this to taking away basic skills. In a curriculum that, say for instance, pushes phonics, in the school that I was headmaster of, we took a kindergarten age 4 student, kindergarten age 4, at the end of the school year, gave him a document that he had never seen and could read short vowel sentences. That was amazing.
Yeah.
That brought a round of applause. That's the kind of education that we need, and that's the kind of process we need to be doing, in my judgment.
Okay, one of the questions was what differentiates you from your opponents? You say, I'm the candidate of lower taxes. So distinguish your view on lower taxes from those of your opponent, Bruce Tuff. Same for I'm the candidate of fiscal responsibility. How does your position differ from that of Bruce Tuff? I'm the candidate for life. Is Bruce Tuff anti-life? Distinguish yourself.
Sure, I think that's a fair question. First of all, this is an open. There is no incumbent.
Correct.
And so I don't have any track record to follow Bruce on in terms of his view of life. But that doesn't make me not the candidate for life, just because he maybe is or he isn't.
But the question is what differentiates you from your opponent? That was the question you were asked to answer.
How are you different? Yeah. If you know.
Well, I do, but I'm at this point, I'm not going to say. I will tell you though, that in terms of life, I am not in favor of partial birth abortion. I will tell you in terms of pro-life, I'm not in favor of abortion except for the sole possibility, which in most cases is hypothetical, where the death of the mother is challenged. That's a rare event when that happens. So let me just say that.
Okay.
So let me jump in now. Oh,
Go ahead.
so since you would be a state legislature and the state and the federal government interacts, and so you would really need to know the Constitution, where their line, where their jurisdiction ends and the state begins. So where is the separation of church and state in the Constitution?
I don't believe that there is a separation of church and state in the Constitution.
Okay.
I believe that go ahead.
So when it comes to,
I thought you were going to ask him to elaborate on my questions. We haven't gotten answers yet.
oh, go ahead, jump back to you.
The candidate of lower taxes.
Right, okay.
Compare yourself with
Okay,
your opponent.
here. All I know this. I've been living in Montgomery County. I've been living in the Woodlands since 1996. I've watched our population grow. I have watched our population increase exponentially. When I came here, it was about 48,000. It's supposed to be 125,000 at the end of February. Whether or not it gets there, I'm not sure. I know that my property taxes continue to go up. I know that the Nelda Blairs of the world, and I know that the Bruce Tuffs of the world and others are there and are involved in all of this type of activity. There are some things I know that are being done or that have been done that really don't have anything to do with anybody's with the need for protection, for education, these kinds of things that we stand for. For instance, we're turning soccer fields. We need soccer fields. I know that they just took over, they built these 2 soccer fields up here over by the motorcycle track. But we take over off of Research Forest, we take soccer fields and we turn it into a dog playground deal. I mean, help me with this.
So you don't want the dog vote?
I love dogs. I have 3 dogs. But we have so much money. I'd like to see a little bit of that come back. How is it that we can do what we've done up there on the lake? This thing keeps coming up to me as I think about whether it's federal dollars or whatever. Who can authorize, who allows for us to buy 6 boats of whatever cost they are? Who allows us to spend upwards of $850,000 on a dock? Okay, that's, every time I drive by, it's just sitting. I see them every once in a while at holidays, and please tell me how $5 a person is gonna ever pay any of this money back, especially recently in spending $50,000 in refurbishing each one of those boats and having to already clean up a spill. I mean, I'm assuming that that's a little bit of a problem. I don't know how y'all feel about that. I love the woodlands. I love to see the cool stuff around here and the cool statues and all the rest. But we have so many people coming in. We got Exxon coming in. We have other oil companies and other companies that are coming here so fast. Economy of scale says, I've got so much money coming in for the amount of expenses that I have. Things ought to be dropping, and they're going up. That has to do with expansion of government. That has to do with what they're doing with our tax dollars. They've been in charge. I'm just an old car guy running 6 businesses under the same roof, trying to figure out how to deal with private money.
Their chairman's a Methodist pastor, so I would expect you to have a little bit more empathy.
Well, you know, and I love him. He's one of my customers. Pastor Rob is a friend and a good guy. But, you know, Bruce is now in charge of that deal. He was sworn in the other night.
Oh, yeah.
I went and watched.
Forgot about that, yeah.
You know, the Blair got awards, and I mean, it was cool. And they've done great things, but they're not afraid to spend money. So what happens to me, in my judgment, is I think about this, I think, okay, we're taking in all this money, so we're doing all this extra stuff, and if they're not stopping the taxes or lowering taxes, that means they're creating new opportunities, which is creating more bureaucracy, which is creating bigger government.
So let me jump in, let's change gears. So when it comes to, there's this basic, people are oriented toward either they're a little bit, safety is their big deal or liberty is their big deal. Which are you and why?
Safety or liberty?
They compete with each other.
Security.
Security, safety.
If you're quoting Ben Franklin or.
Well, government provided safety versus
Okay.
government letting us keep liberty.
I believe that the government is designed, that the purpose of government, one of the major purposes of government is to protect our borders, to protect us, to punish evildoers. I believe that is that is essential. But at the same time, I also believe that because we are a free society, because freedom is important to us, that there are risks associated with freedom. I believe that a person ought to be able to pick up their telephone and they ought to be able to make a telephone call without being listened to, even if they're listening for terrorists. Because in the hands of the wrong people, guess what's happening? They're listening to everybody. I think that in terms of how we operate as far as safety in airports, there is risk. There's risk. But you know what? To spend the amount of money that they spend, to pat us all down, to do whatever, to keep that security, the amount of inconvenience that's there, is one thing. Another thing is nobody doesn't want to be safe. We all want to be safe. But the fact of the matter is we have lost the battle if our way of life goes away because we're so concerned about what happens to us. Freedom is about standing for the things that are right. It's about punishing those who do wrong, rather than dialing back and figuring out ways to constantly protect ourselves and give up more freedom and more freedom and more freedom and more freedom. I'm a freedom guy.
Okay. Larry.
And let me just say this.
Okay.
And also, in that freedom, with the right to defend myself and my family as I need to do that.
Earlier you were talking about education and how everything, the kids are being taught with computers and all, and that ties right in with Agenda 20, not Agenda 20, with C-Scope. What kind of curriculum are you familiar with any of the curriculum of the C-Scope?
No, I'm not familiar with it as if I've read it, but it's not curriculum. The issue with C-Scope, for me, has to do with transparency and parent involvement, not with the textbooks, but with the teaching tools that are given to the teachers. They're given online, and I mean, they're not even published, and they won't even let the parents see, or they won't let them have any involvement in it. That's the problem with C-Scope. They don't match the textbooks. Okay, so if that's the case, and I will get more into this, but in my understanding on a cursory note, as I'm getting into this and as I'm growing in it and as I'm learning, a pretty quick study. Just seems to me that what is in the textbooks ought to be reinforced by what the teachers are being required to teach. I also think that however this applies to everybody, whoever ends up watching this can take it, is that anybody who is in any position of authority in education cannot also be a lobbyist for any of a manufacturer who is producing things and who is producing online materials where they are pushing that for the benefit of the company that's making it. I mean, that's mind-boggling.
Okay, Ken?
You talked about phone calls, and the government shouldn't be able to listen into them. Fair enough. Of course, the NSA is saying that they aren't listening into them.
I'm sorry, they're saying?
The NSA is essentially saying they are not listening to our phone calls. So, do you believe them? And what sort of action, if the federal government, which is supreme to the state government, is going to do something like that, what can the state do to protect its citizens?
Well, first of all, I do believe it's happening. Absolute power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if there's not a check and balance on that, if nobody's speaking out in that, then it's going to continue to take place. Now, we know that it already has taken place. Okay? So how that stops or what takes place or how it moves forward in the future, I'm not sure. We as a state, though, because of states' rights, although they don't want us to, we have rights to protect our citizens as a state. We are able to do what we need to do to ensure, just like Steve Toth did with the gun issue, and how the bill that was passed was that if the government, basically was this, if the government passes that bill and these guys try and apply it to us here, we have a law in place that says they can't do it. And that's where states' rights come in. And so when it comes to listening in our phone conversations, when it comes to where we shop, how we use the internet, that sort of thing, those are personal issues, and my state ought to be able to protect me. At what level, I've not thought about how to go about doing that, but at what level that is, but I believe that we as a state, as a sovereign state, one of our distinctives in our platform as a state is that we are although we are connected to the national enterprise as one of the 50 states, we still have a right and a desire and an obligation to keep a measure of independence so that we can make decisions for our people on our behalf based upon how they vote and what they desire.
Dennis?
That's my thinking.
You know, in a lot of ways, the U.S. government and the state of Texas have some similar problems. At the national level, we see the EPA and Department of Labor passing rules that have the effect of law, things that Congress should do. And in Texas, we have a lot of agencies, the PUC is one, that passes rules that in effect are laws. And they pass some things that are actually socialist models, requiring companies and utilities to do things that are socialist in nature. So what's the state legislature going to do, or how can the state legislature rein those guys in?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I think first of all, the state, I believe that there's a connection to term limits here. I'm in favor of term limits. I believe that when you do not have term limits, for not just state officials or elected officials, but also for bureaucrats, people who are in these organizations that are able to get a stronghold. It's like a tenured teacher in a university. Who comes up with this? Only the tenured teachers, only the teachers who want to stay there. It's like Congress votes themselves to be able to be, or not necessarily Congress, but the Senate voted on behalf of Congress so that they could be exempt from Obamacare. I mean, how can this happen? So you have this taking place at that level. So you have these guys in these organizations who have been there a long time. It seems to become exacerbated over time. It gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse. We as a government have a right and a responsibility to make sure that the number one issue of which I believe in our environmental ethics, the number one issue is that our most valuable resource are our people. And where the issue crosses over, where restrictions are put in place, where the quality of life or people are damaged or hurt or loss of jobs or whatever, that needs to be put on hold, that needs to be talked about, and we need to put together the creativity of our most valuable resource and fix it, as opposed to just rolling over and playing dead on laws that have to do with the EPA.
One last question.
Does that make
James?
sense?
You got the last one there.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna ask just a general question then. How do you plan to run your campaign in order to be victorious? What do you plan to do? And your expected budget?
Right. First of all, let me say, I'm serious about this campaign. I put $50,000 of my own money into my campaign account the other day. I have another $50,000 waiting to go into it. My wife and I have personally pledged $100,000 of our retirement money to this, knowing that there's a possibility that we may not win and that we'll never get it back. So we have money to get going.
Okay.
The second thing that I have done is I've hired a consultant, Luke Macias. Luke Macias has been giving me great stuff. I met with him and my campaign chairman today. By the way, that money is at Wood Forest Bank. I met with my campaign chairman today, and we talked with Luke, and he is helping us with an overall plan for victory. That is coming, but let me tell you what we have done so far and where we're at. We have a website that's ready to go hot, and that's the announcement. That's the landing page. The website will come after that.